After completing this lesson, you'll be able to set up work coordinates, specify stock dimensions, and correctly orientate the CAD part to be machined. You'll also set up, specify tools, specify parameters, and simulate multiple CNC turning operations. And finally, you'll cut a thread in the front of the bolt fixing. Okay, in this lesson I want to take a look at machining the bolt fixing for the ear assembly. To do this, you're going to need to open a file in the assets called bolt fixing CAM. So open up that file. On the rear of the bolt fixing, we've added a round part so that it works within the turning operation. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our model and we're going to go into the CAM environment. The CAM environment allows us to do milling or turning, as well as other operations such as water jet cutting. So we're going to go to Setup, and in the operation type we're going to select turning. When we do that, we can see that there's a round surface here, which means that we've got the right operation set up. But our fixing isn't in the right orientation, so we're going to create the Z-axis so it knows where the Z-axis is. So we just need to click on the front of the part and then make sure that the Z-axis is pointing in this direction, so the tool movement is pointing away from the job. So we need to change the stock diameter to 22 millimeters and then change the length of the stock to 40 millimeters so that we've got enough stock to hold in the chuck when we're using the lathe. And we're going to place the model position and offset it from the back with a 1 millimeter offset, which means that we know that the front of our part is here and we've got a millimeter extra material in front, so that when we face it off we'll get a nice clean front face. What we can now do is add our first operation, which is a turning operation, and we're going to face off the front of the part here. Now, we don't really need to tell Fusion to do much because it understands where the part is. All we need to do is select the right tool, and I'm selecting a 0.8 millimeter turning tool. The next thing we want to do, if we wish, is to set the spindle speed according to the material or the feedstock that we have. So I'm going to set this to 1000 RPM, which is a good speed for the operation that we want to do using the material that we're using, and then click OK. Now straight away in Fusion 360 CAM environment we can simulate the operation. So if we go over to the browser, right click on our first operation and then select simulate, then go down and click play to start the simulation, and we can see it's just done that facing off operation. And we can close the dialog window. So now we're going to add our second turning operation, which is a turning profile operation. Now we only want to cut the profile from this surface to this surface. But I am going to change the tool. I'm going to go for a slightly finer tool, a 0.2 millimeter turning tool, which gives us a little bit more clearance. We could change the geometry, and I'm going to confine the area that we're going to machine. So I'm going to select this face and then this edge. So that means that we're only able to machine between those two edges. For our passes, we're going to make sure that we leave some stock. We're going to leave 0.1 millimeters of stock on the diameter because we're going to run a rough pass with this operation, which will follow with a finishing pass on the next operation to give us a really fine finish. Click OK and it's done, and you can see the line, the yellow line where the tool paths are going to go. So to create the finishing cut on this profile, if we right click our second turning operation in the browser, create a derived operation and then turning profile, we can keep all of the parameters that we've got here. And if we just click on the passes and turn off the roughing pass, don't leave any stock, that'll give us our final finish on this profile. And here you can see the yellow line that shows the final finish profile cut. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to add a thread. So if we click turning and then turning thread, and we want to add a thread here at the end on that face there. So what we need to do is select a threading tool. So we can add a simple 20 millimeter ISO threading tool here and then click OK. And then if we click geometry, we need to tell Fusion what to thread. So we click that surface and we can tell Fusion that that surface needs a thread on it. At the moment it's got a 0 offset on the backside stock offset. So we need to increase that by 1 millimeter so that the thread doesn't stop too short. If we click the passes tab, we can make some changes here. And I want the thread depth to be 0.5 millimeters, and I only want it to pass 3 times. So I want the thread to be cut over 3 passes rather than 5. I'm happy with all the other settings, so I'll just click OK. So we've got 4 operations at the moment. We've got 3 turning processes and then 1 threading process. If I right click on Setup, I can simulate all of them. So that's the facing off, and now it's rough cutting the profile, the final finishing cut, and then 3 passes for the thread. 1, 2, 3, and that's the operations complete. In the next video we'll deal with the other side by cutting out the groove, then parting off the material, and also look at post-processing and producing a setup sheet.